It was just a regular Tuesday evening in Wilmington, North Carolina, the kind of night where the air smells like magnolia, and the streets seem to hold memories in their cracks. Ruth Ellington, 74 years old, was making her way home after a quiet afternoon at the local market. Her steps were slow, measured, her cane tapping against the sidewalk with a rhythm that was hers, and hers alone. Nothing extraordinary about this evening, nothing out of the ordinary, until it wasn't. As Ruth turned the corner onto her street, she caught sight of a white police cruiser parked under a nearby tree. The engine hummed low, the headlights off, the kind of stillness that felt almost like waiting. Ruth didn't think much of it, at least. Not at first. But then she saw him. Officer Bradley Knox, sitting behind the wheel, elbow resting casually on the window, eyes following her every move. She had seen that look before, the kind that says, "You don't belong here." Ruth kept walking, slow but steady, her shoulders square with the world. "Evening, ma'am," he called out, his voice rough, sharp, like gravel on concrete. Ruth didn't slow her pace, but acknowledged him, with a slight nod. "Evening," she replied, voice firm but calm. She wasn't in a hurry. But there was something about his gaze that made her feel like she needed to be. "Where you headed this time of night?" he asked, his tone too familiar, too probing. "Just heading home. 2 blocks up, same house I've lived in for 40 years. Knox leaned out the window, his smirk barely hiding his condescension. "That right?" he drawled, dragging the words out like he was savoring a slow game. "You carrying anything in that bag I ought to know about?" Ruth didn't flinch. She wasn't scared, not yet. "Just some bread and peaches," she replied, holding his gaze. Nothing more, nothing less. For a moment, nothing moved. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then, with a creak that cut through the silence, Knox threw open the car door, stepping out in one aggressive motion. His boots hit the pavement with purpose, the sound too loud for the peaceful neighborhood. "Mind if I take a look, ma'am?" he asked, closing the distance between them. "I do mind," Ruth answered, steady as a rock. "Unless you've got a reason. There's no call for this." Her words hung in the air, unwavering. Knox wasn't used to being challenged. He took a step closer, his eyes narrowing. "You got a smart mouth," he said. "Most people just answer when an officer asks a question." "You got something to hide. I'm 74, Ruth replied, her voice like steel. "I've been walking these streets longer than you've had that badge. All I've got in this bag is dinner, if that makes me suspicious. Then you've got the wrong lens on your glasses." "Officer." The tension in the air was thick enough to cut with a knife. Knox, not used to being dismissed, let out a low growl. His jaw tightened, and for a brief second, Ruth saw the flicker of something else in his eyes. He wasn't just a cop now. He was a man with something to prove. Then he made his move. He grabbed her bag, yanking it from her shoulder and spilling the contents, peaches, bread, and homemade jam onto the sidewalk. The fruit smashed under his boot with a sickening squelch. "Looks like you've been shopping for trouble," he sneered, grinding the heel of his boot into the peaches. Ruth didn't react, at least. Not in the way he expected. She looked down at the mess, her jaw tightening but her face calm. "That's my dinner, officer," she said quietly, voice steady but heavy with unspoken history. He laughed loud. Cruel. But Ruth didn't flinch. She wasn't going to give him the satisfaction. Instead, she straightened her back, met his gaze with the kind of defiance that had weathered decades of injustice. But then, just when it seemed like this confrontation might turn into something much darker, something unexpected happened. The air shifted, like the wind had decided to change direction. From behind the cruiser, a black SUV turned the corner, its tires crunching against the pavement with an air of authority. Knox froze, his smirk faltering. The SUV rolled to a stop, and out of it stepped a man dressed in a navy blue suit, his posture calm but commanding. As he walked toward them, Ruth felt the world narrow into that one moment, the moment when everything shifted. The man approached her, eyes locked on her, and when he spoke, his voice was tight but filled with something Ruth recognized immediately: concern, and something deeper. "Ma," he said softly. "You all right?" Ruth looked up, and for the first time, she allowed herself to relax, just a little. "You got here fast," she murmured. The man was Elijah Ellington, her son, a high-ranking police officer himself. The shift in power was immediate. Knox's posture stiffened, and Ruth could feel it too. The man who had been standing over her in dominance now shrunk beneath the weight of his own actions. Elijah didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. "You put your hands on my mother," he said, his tone calm. But each word felt like a hammer. "You humiliated her, dumped her food on the street, and forced her to kneel. You think that's going to stand?" Knox's eyes flicked from Elijah to Ruth and back, his face slowly losing color. "Was just—" "You decided to escalate," Elijah interrupted. "You decided to punish her." Ruth watched in silence as Elijah took control, as he demanded accountability from the officer who had once thought he could get away with anything. In that moment, Ruth realized this wasn't just about her. It was about the power to stand tall in the face of those who think they can break you. And just like that, Knox was stripped of his badge and his weapon, the very tools he had used to assert control. Elijah turned to his mother, his eyes softer now. "You good? Ma, I will be," Ruth answered quietly. "Not today, but soon." As they walked away from the confrontation, Ruth felt something shift inside her, not just a victory, but a profound sense of peace. She had stood her ground, and in doing so, she had shown the world what true strength looked like. And just as they reached their car, Elijah glanced over at his mother. "You think they'll come back?" he asked. Ruth didn't answer right away. She simply stared ahead, her thoughts as calm as her breath. "I don't know," she said. "But if they do, they'll know I'm still here." As the two of them got into the car, the world outside seemed to pause for just a moment. The streetlights flickered on, and Ruth settled into her seat with a small, quiet smile. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time in a long while, she felt like justice was finally within reach.